Hi, Tanya. Can you hear me?
Go. I can hear you now.
Oh, hi, welcome.
Thanks.
I'm just going to drop our replay link so I don't forget. And I am excited to get into I called it your journey to creative wholeness. That's what came through as I was adding a little title for our chat today.
Beautiful.
So, how are you? I know we're going to get into how the last 3 months have been, but yeah, just want to settle in a little and hear how you're doing today. What's alive?
Hey, what is alive? Yeah, just winter. We just got 14 inches of snow overnight. Um, yeah, and since our working together, yeah, I guess I'm really just feeling like, okay, like just going deeper, really deeper into myself, unwinding even more. I just recognize that so much. And I think mostly because of what my energy's telling me. Like I'm really exhausted. Like
Mm,
it's kind of like, how it's almost like when you're in the busyness of things, it is an addiction,
it is.
right? It's an addiction. And then through your guidance of like catching myself, like just stop. And then you stop and then you feel like, wow, okay.
A lot
Like
here.
there's a lot here, a lot to slow down and tune into, and even just it's and trusting the process of slowing down. Even with my art, it's kind of like I could see reflecting back now the good student when you're like, okay, go paint. I'm like, yeah, okay, okay, I'm gonna go paint, and oh wow, I feel great. Okay, it's like, no, that's not it. Like, oh yeah,
But
uh,
it's such an important step too. Like I just want to honor and reflect that when we're in these transitional periods, for lack of a better word. It's like it's not it, but it's also supportive of it. Does
right,
that make sense?
totally, yep.
And by it,
I
we're
could
talking
see
about
that.
creative recovery.
Yep, yep, yeah.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing. So, sometimes it looks nice and tidy at the end of 3 months, and it's like, okay, this happened. And then sometimes it looks like that over 6 months or 9 months or a year. It can just vary for everybody.
Yeah.
And what I love is just honoring the growth and the progress and the any outcomes that came from those internal shifts, regardless of what those are. And that's been a journey for me too, because I've had my own journey with marketing matrix and productivity programming, and
Mm.
um, there were times when I minimized my client successes because they didn't hit 7 figures, right? And it's like that's not for everyone. That's for some of my clients. And so what? So I'm really excited to just kind of hear, for those watching and listening, where you kind of were before, because we just tapped into some of the messy middle, which
Yeah.
is, okay, I've got this good student thing. I'm going to go do my self-care, but I'm going to do it from a gold star to get something
Yeah.
versus it's kind of like a means to an end.
Yeah.
And so that has been unraveling. And I've watched it really, like I can feel you in your roots of wisdom when you're not in the good student mode. So maybe you want to speak a little bit about kind of before and what brought you into my space in the first place.
Yeah, so I mean, before I was, I consider myself a newbie when it comes to entrepreneurship.
Even though you're 3 years in the online
Even though I'm
space,
three, yes,
correct?
yes, 3 years of being in the online space, which to me feels like the absolute wild, wild west. Like before the West was fully colonized or whatever, like it's just the wild west of like, whoa, what is this? Okay, I have a lot to learn. And I knew I was in a place of like, I'm all in, I'm all into this business that I want to create. And I knew for myself well, anyway, it'll be interesting to see how you respond to this, but I felt at the time that I didn't have what I needed to
Mhm.
be successful. So I was like pouring out all this money into coaches that were teaching strategy, like specific strategies. I'm like, yes, that's what I need. I just need to know how to do this. So like the good student in me loved that. I was like, okay, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And I would follow that and I would get some results, but then I was freaking exhausted. I was like, are you kidding me?
Mm,
I have to do this
mm,
ongoing, like
mm.
nonstop, month after month after month. I thought, I'm so wiped out. I just don't see.
I'm going to be done before I start, is what
Yeah,
it
I'm
sounds
like, I don't
like.
even know how I can do this just physically. And of
Yeah.
course, at that time, I knew nothing about human design, nothing about it. And I think because in our culture, it's almost like there's just this blanket that everybody has to operate. This is what productivity looks like,
Mhm, mhm.
um, irregardless of who you are. Like this is just how it's done, and this is how you're supposed to do it. So that's kind of where I was coming at. Like, oh, this is what I have to do. I just have to hit the floor running and keep pumping it out. And so when I came into your space, I really didn't know what to expect. I was just like, yeah, okay, I'm open. I'm open to learning, and
The
especially
most popular statement ever, by the way. Like,
I
in
didn't know what to expect.
well, yeah, in my decade plus of entrepreneurship, like I can't tell you how many times that's the that's the magic, and I can say this to you, and I think you'll appreciate it, of projectors too, because as a fellow projector, someone may not understand intellectually what they're getting into, but they feel the pull and they
Yeah,
feel that, like from our aura and that kind of ability to see,
yeah,
someone else will feel seen. And it can literally happen in a 15-minute conversation. And this is true before I ever knew anything of human design. I was just operating naturally in that projector way, where it's like someone who, at that time, I was an art therapist. They may have never even heard of art therapy, but 15 minutes into the conversation, they're like, I don't know what Kool-Aid you're drinking, but I'd like a taste. Like, let's just see what this is, right?
yeah. And yeah, and at that time before working with you, I had friends that were asking me like, well, what are you doing with your art nowadays? And I'm like, nothing. I'm pouring all that creative energy into my business. Like I'm literally channeling all that creative energy towards writing content, towards just creating my business. And I mean, yeah, all those 3 years I had not really been painting. And um, that's been, I mean, painting has been such a core part of who I am. I mean, ever since I was a kid, I was always drawing, painting. I mean, I went to art school and
It's a
now
little heartbreaking, isn't it?
it is heartbreaking.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
can
actually
feel I
brings
can
up a lot of
feel
sad.
the grief of like, God damn, like wow, we really wanted like want it to work so much that we're willing to sacrifice core aspects of our joy and nourishment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It does feel that way. And in fact, when you would talk about your grief journal, your grief art, like I was like, I think I need to take some time to do that because yeah, and I mean and even in being an artist, like when there was a time when I did have some time and space to focus on it, and I put up a show and everything. It was also geared towards productivity, towards making art that I thought would be pleasing to others. I mean, pleasing to myself, but like sellable, always
Mhm.
with kind of an outcome. never really giving myself the space to just paint for myself, just without this expectation that, oh, this is gonna do something for me, or this is gonna get me something, or I'm
Yeah.
gonna turn around and sell this, piece of artwork somehow, to kind of show off my skills. And so, yeah, to be in a place where, um, to let go of that and to paint something that maybe isn't pretty is, it's like, whoa, you know,
Yeah.
it's,
There's a lot of freedom, I like to call it the ugly art, even though that's a judgment. It's like just full permission for it to be what it is, whether it's ugly or beautiful.
Mhm.
And that is a very different way, especially, and this is a little bit of an aside, but I was having a conversation with a friend of mine who's an artist and an art process artist. So it's not so focused on skill. And if you've been through art education, which you have, then that's a whole other level of programming, which is focused on technique. And so it's not really supportive of the process. And, unless you happen to get a very special mentor that
Yeah.
values process as much as product.
Mhm.
And so I really appreciate what you're saying, because I know how important this is for you as an artist, but even someone who's not an artist, like anyone who doesn't wear that label and is probably even hesitant to wear the label of creative because of the conditioning of that's like reserved for special people with skill, when technically creativity is a way of life. Creativity is a way of being. And it's a suspension from hyper focus on what this thing is going to be, so that you can discover what this thing is, whatever the thing is. And in this situation, we're talking about your painting, but now there's also this translation over to the business.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear kind of what your business looked like before
Hmm.
uh, we started working together, and a little bit of what it looks like now, knowing that there's seasons and cycles. So none of it's right or wrong, but
Yeah.
there might be even an experiential feeling of your business versus even the way it looks.
Yeah. Um, well, I'd say that before it was a lot of throwing spaghetti on the wall to see what would stick. Um, and, I'd have some successes, as far as like signing on clients, and 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 then moving into like, well, okay, when there wasn't the sales, moving to, okay, well, I'm just going to do pay what you can, which is, which you pointed out, like that's very much the prostitute archetype. And
And for clarification, it doesn't have to be.
uh-huh.
There can be some genius of the prostitute, which we won't get into here. But I knew energetically it was oof, I don't want to stand in my devotion to this is what I need to take care of myself and my family.
Yeah, it's the easy way out of a situation, because it's easy to do, it's, for me, that's my patterning, is overgiving, and just, well, it's better that I be doing something, even if it's for almost nothing, um, that at least I'm doing, I'm being productive in some way. And so for right now, yeah, just taking a moment to really slow down and look at, well, what is it that I'm actually cultivating? And so I've been, offering these workshops that have felt really aligned. And then instead of putting the pressure on myself to, make the offer, or um, present something at the end that feels total car salesman like, really horrible. Yeah, it's just awful. I'm like, you know what? I'm just
Oh.
I'm just gonna,
Feel that for you.
yeah, I feel, and so I just now and I love doing the free workshops. They're great because it gives me also content to work with. But to just lean back and trust and just like, this is me. And if you want to work with me, here's ways and, I do it in a different way. And also, um, to,
Meaning you don't do the car salesman presentation anymore.
no, I don't. I don't even bring it up. I just say, thanks for joining. And then, I'll send an email out and just give them the replay and share with them how they can work with me or if they want to book a call, whatever. And I just leave it at that. Um, and so cultivating those deeper relationships. So I think in the past, I really didn't understand, and this is something that has been told to me many times, is that, the point of contact, like you have to have contact with somebody repeatedly before they buy, right? Typically. I mean, some people will buy on the spot. They see you, they're like, yes, you're
Yeah,
the,
you don't have to. It kind of depends on who your ideal client is, but it can certainly, the way I see it, and you may have heard me speak to this somewhere else, but it's like you have the early adopters, and then you have the stragglers on the end, and then the mass majority is in the middle. That is like they see somebody else doing the new innovative thing and they're like, oh, okay, I'll try it. Like maybe I could like an iPhone better than a flip phone, right?
right,
But they weren't the ones to rush to Apple and get the new thing the day it came out. And
right.
so if you're working with the mass majority of people, then it is true that they're going to kind of want a warm up, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think I discovered for myself what I was trapped in was just on the hamster wheel of posting content for the sake of posting content. Like that's kind of like the strategies that I had learned. Like you just have to be consistent every day posting something. And so I was just pumping stuff out um and so the analogy is what I've come to realize is like, okay, if I really want to, if we're looking at business as art, if I really want to create a masterpiece, then it's going to take time. Like I really need to kind of, it's like the difference between, a fast food meal versus um, 7 course fine dining
Yeah.
dinner, right? So um, really slowing down to curate, okay, what is the experience that I want the people that choose to work with me to have? And
Which is a very different energy than a survival consciousness of I have to make money now. And I want to honor too that there is like life's a paradox, right? So it's like we want to create the fine dining experience if that's what your taste is.
yeah,
And we also do want to create income because we still live in a world where money is required for resources to gather resources. And so I think it's a really interesting topic for where you're at with that dance because it's absolutely a dance. It's not either or.
yeah,
And it's also about defining for yourself, which I love that you have done, like what does consistency mean? Right? If you hear people saying you got to be consistent, you got to be consistent. Well, consistency can be running a free workshop once a quarter, or consistency can be doing, um, a community call twice a year, or your consistency can be very different than everything is daily.
right, going live every day for 20 minutes or something. Yeah, yeah. And so yeah, so really taking the time, okay, of turning it into artwork, how do I want to present myself, and how do I want to experience this for myself as well? Um, so yeah, that slowing down piece, and I think part of the consistency for me too has been that before I was really neglecting my physical body. Really,
Mhm.
I mean, I was just not giving myself time for pleasure, for taking a walk every day or doing some kind of nourishing practice. Now I had a morning practice, but beyond that, I felt like I was really distracted by um, busyness for the sake of being busy, uh,
Mhm.
and realizing how much I needed to prune if I really, again, it's like if we're in it for the long game,
Yeah.
and especially as a projector, it's like, yeah, you really do have to have that
Yeah, because that
space.
doing it every single day, if consistency is I must do all these things like post every day, live stream every day, whatever, workshop every week, then it's not sustainable. You're doing it to try and get the income now, to hurry up, to rush to relax,
Yeah.
which is a survival pattern.
Yeah, it reminds me of that fairy tale of the dancing red shoes. Do you know this fairy
Mm,
tale?
mm-mm.
So it's like this girl, I don't remember all the parts of the story, but the image that always sticks with me is that there's these magic dancing red shoes, and, I think she's probably warned not to wear them, but she's like, oh, but they're so shiny. And so she puts them on and she's dancing, but suddenly she's just dancing faster and like the dancing shoes take over.
No.
And she can't get out of these dancing shoes. Like she's exhausted and they're continuing to dance no matter what. And I forget how she gets out of that, but that was the feeling that I was in. It was kind of just like willing to do the dance, but oh my God, like this thing
I
is,
have not seen that parable or story, but I now am aware that if you remember back in the day, Saved by the Bell, the show.
oh God, that sounds really familiar. Yes, I know
Yeah.
the
It was
name.
like an 80s, 90s show. And apparently they did a version of that where
Okay.
one of the characters is like dancing maniacally and she can't stop. And the next thing you know, she's doing like mini thins, which are caffeine pills. And she just can't quit. Like, and the friends had to do an intervention because it's like it becomes this addictive thing. And we live in a culture where even the self-care can become a checklist item. So
Yeah,
then there's not a depth of presence there. And what I hear you speaking to is like you're slowing down enough to be present to what do I want? What do I believe? What is good for me? Which is the embodied wealth alignment piece versus following somebody else's formula.
yeah,
And I know you're still in process, yet I have had the pleasure of witnessing you celebrate some pretty big wins along the way.
yeah,
First retreats, increased sales, things like that. And I know you said it's winter, so things feel a little slower, but I'd love to just hear you speak to what that experience was. Like, how did these people find you? How are you creating sales and filling retreats if you're not doing daily posting and
yeah.
all the things you thought you were supposed to do?
Well, yeah, when those sales came in, they were effortless. Like none of those sales were me chasing after people or having the facing the or whatever, dealing with objections, like having those conversations, which I've never been good. I mean, I've watched trainings about overcoming objections and the things you have to say, and I was like, I never had to do any of that. It was just, it really was effortless, especially with the retreat. It was just like, the, the name of it and the imagery and what I just all of it felt really juicy to me. And it just naturally, the people that signed up were just like, hell yes, sign me on. They didn't even have to ask for, well, can I get on a call with you? And I don't know. And, all the questions and the doubts. It was just, they were just full yeses. And so that really was beautiful to experience because I think we can get hooked into thinking that you're only going to get sales if it's hard, if you work really hard at it.
Yeah. And I would imagine that that also shaped the because you've been taking the time to slow down and question like what do I really want? What do I want to build long term? I would imagine that that's informed that pretty strongly in the sense that you want to attract more of that. You want to create client relationships that don't have the back and forth or the objections or yeah, kind of the push pull.
Yeah, and it's kind of like I feel like there's an infinite number of way to do businesses and none of them are right or wrong. Some people can be out there and it's like flipping pancakes. They're just, selling, 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 and it's all, whatever, and just maybe not as an in-depth experience. Um, but for me, with my human design and just my natal chart, all of it's all points towards that, I like to go deep and I like to work deep, and the surface level flipping pancakes is not going to work. So then that does require some slowness and some time to cultivate, right?
Mm.
So I guess just honoring that. And so if by honoring that more about myself, then of course others are going to see me more clearly. Whereas if I am not authentically aligned to my own energy and I'm just pumping out content to pump out content, people are going to pick up on that. They're going to be like, wow, look at those dancing shoes. So it's like,
Yeah.
no, that's not who I want to put myself out there as. So, um, yeah, a lot of unhooking and still continuing to unhook from, yeah, just all of those things. I think the internet is an interesting place because it is there's lots of shiny objects and there's lots of comparison, and to find a mentor that is actually gonna really hold up a clear mirror, like giving you the hard truth, like I think that's rare. I think there's a lot of business coaches, and I'm not putting them down. I'm sure many of them do get results for the clients, but I know that um, in a lot of these containers, it's kind of there are some people that win and get the high results because their energy is a match. It's like they're the similar
Absolutely.
energetic imprint, and the
Mhm.
rest are just like left holding the bag and like feeling
No,
like,
you're 100% right. I've thought about it a lot over the last few years about how well, one, there's technically a difference between a coach and a mentor and how they're defined. And now, of course, we have like a melange on the internet of it's all used interchangeably and you don't really know what you're getting. But someone is gonna, if they have created a formula that worked for them, they're now selling it as it also will work for you. The problem with that is that most of the world is created for generators, manifesting generators and such. And so it actually, not to make projectors a victim by any means, but it actually makes it that much more challenging for a projector to get supported if they are hiring people who are not adept at seeing
yeah,
deeply, because that's the hardest thing for a projector is to see themselves. They're so used to seeing everything else so clearly.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so it actually, yeah, it does make it a little bit slippery. Doesn't mean it's impossible. And honestly, if your energy is super clear and aligned, you you tend to find that even without trying. Like my very first mentor, I don't know, he wouldn't even know what to call himself. He was a psychotherapist, a psychologist, a coach, a mentor, like all the different, and he just was really skilled at seeing. And I would venture to guess he might have been a projector. However, I stayed with him for many, many years before I ever entered the coaching sphere. And then when I entered the coaching sphere, it got very sticky because I had some shiny object syndrome. But you can technically when you're in that place, it's almost like you have blinders on. Because I did. I had blinders on when I was first coming into entrepreneurship. Like I didn't. it probably helped that I wasn't online much. But it's
Yeah,
like that, when you just are so focused on what you want and you know what that is, then it's really helpful. So I just think it's such a beautiful space for you to be deepening that.
yeah,
One, to have pulled back from taking in from other people, because that's kind of like a foundational step from any
sure.
deconditioning, and unhooking process. Like you've really got to just create some white space to even see and feel yourself so that you can then see and feel like, what is the actual desire here?
Well, and what was interested to observe in working with you, it's so funny because I remember I felt like there were times where I'm like, I just want you to tell me what to do. And
Oh, yeah.
you're like,
I've had clients leave before because I
oh yeah,
wasn't giving them the formula. Not
you're
that
like,
long ago either.
oh yeah, you're like, no, no, honey.
Yeah, I'm like, that would be because you've heard the adage about giving someone a fish dinner
Yeah,
versus teaching them to fish. Like, I'm not in the business of feeding people fish. I want to
just
teach you to listen to yourself and to go within. And yes, I'm there to support with strategy when you are embodied.
well, yeah, when you're actually ready for it.
Yeah, but when you're using it as a distraction from yourself, I'm doing my best not to puke over here. I'm like, okay, 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 this is a lot because I've had clients like coming at me with like, just give me the goods, you know, like I'm withholding, and I'm not, because
Yeah,
I don't have a formula for every person I meet, right? We're discovering your unique blueprint together.
yeah, yeah, and I think it's really hard to, yeah, you're really skilled at just kind of holding that tension, because um, the desire to make money, I think for most people is strong, right? I mean, that's just part of this world, and it's a need and it's a must. And yeah, and so when we get into those hungry spaces, we're just like, it can be difficult, but in the long run, it's it's like the difference between going to like the gas station and getting one of those 5-hour energy shot drinks versus like actually taking your vitamins on a daily basis and eating healthy, and are you drinking enough water, and you know
Yeah, because hunger can come from pure passion and
right,
innocence. And hunger can come from addiction and malnourishment and total distraction. So it takes a lot of nuance. And when you are an energy reader, when you are, um, I often say, like, I'm more skilled at reading energy and color, shapes, and textures than I am communicating the words of what I'm experiencing. And so I will feel and know where you're at on that spectrum, even when I can't quite put it into words yet.
yeah,
And so that, that can be frustrating for some people if they just, like you're saying, just give me the cookie.
yeah,
But there's a going slow to go fast. And I use fast in air quotes because it's the Tantra way. It is the spiritual journey. It is sacred business to be present and co-create with life force, not from mental agenda. And so yeah, I'm just really thrilled at where you're at and so excited to see where you're going to go. And um, yeah, it's just such a juicy spot to be.
yeah, thank you, Lainey. Yeah, it feels good, it feels yeah, it feels healthy, it just feels what's the word, honest, I guess, just honest and
Real and true.
authentic.
And
Yeah, I mean, just, like, yeah, it feels like I have, time to really just feel and taste and experience all the different textures and feelings and energy, and just really slowing down with it, um, rather than just like trying to move through it quickly. Uh,
Mm.
so yeah, slowing down to move fast, that's something that's been with me for a while. I think it's part of my um, Rudolf Steiner talks about the different zodiacs, and for Scorpio, which is what I am, it's the life lesson is patience. So I keep running into that, the patience, having patience.
I
Um,
hear you. Yeah, I'm not a Scorpio, but I have similar I have similar life lessons, and maybe it's somehow connected to Cancer because I picture both of those as little shell things.
right, little
Yeah.
crustacean type thing.
Yeah, totally. Well, anything else that you want to share? We actually went pretty long. I was disconnected from time. I'm like, oh, it's
Oh yeah.
almost been, I don't know, I lost track. But anyway, is there anything else that you feel important to share or want people to know before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just say to people that are, considering working with you, Lainey, that, this working with you is really about um, coming back to your own truth and all the things that we've already said. Um, but I think first and foremost, I think the nourishment for me, that has been a key piece. And so, um, yeah, to have a sustainable business, nourishment is really the foundation. The pleasure, the nourishment, what is, because life and business are connected. So it's not just all about business. It's like your life is influencing business. So you really have to tend to
And your business is
things.
influencing your life, it's this reciprocal, symbiotic relationship. So you want it to be a healthy one, not dysfunctional,
And it's
avoidant,
worth
anxious.
taking the time, it- taking the time, if this is what you really want. So,
Yeah. Cut out there for just a moment, but I hear you saying it's yeah, it's slowing down to build something that's truly aligned.
yeah, yeah, it's worth taking the time.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you. I
Thanks,
know.
Lee.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I know we're going to talk briefly after this, but thank you so much for sharing your journey and story. And yeah, I just look forward to hearing how it continues to unfold. And I will drop your contact info in the description. So anybody wants to check out Tanya's events, free workshops, retreats.